The crowd was silent, not the reverent silence of respect, nor the horrified stillness of fear, just the cold, indifferent quiet of a galaxy that had already decided Marcus Voss was dead. The former Terran general, now reviled as the Iron Warlord, knelt on the platform in heavy restraints, his once imposing cybernetic armor stripped from him, his flesh bearing the scars of 100 battles. The High Council of the Ascendancy loomed above him, their alien forms adorned in ceremonial robes, their expressions unreadable. They had gathered here, on the capital world of Varnax 5, to witness his final moment. "This is the fate of all who defy the order of the Ascendancy," intoned Archlord Selra, his mandibles clicking in satisfaction. The crowd, a mix of humans and aliens, watched without pity. Some even cheered. To them, Marcus Voss was not a hero. He was a war criminal, a butcher, a remnant of a failed human rebellion that had been crushed under the Ascendancy's heel. A towering executioner stepped forward, wielding a ceremonial energy blade designed to sever both flesh and soul. The Ascendancy wanted no martyr. Voss would not even have the dignity of a last word. His body would be atomized, his name erased from history. The blade rose. The city lights flickered. Then they died. In an instant, the grand amphitheater was swallowed in darkness. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The councilors turned in alarm. High above, the orbital defense grid stuttered, its security feeds scrambled. A half-second later, the first explosion tore through the sky. A second explosion followed, then a third. The palace shields collapsed. Air raid sirens howled. The night sky filled with streaking fire as Drakh ships plummeted from orbit, their hulls blackened with war paint. The sigil on their sides, the clenched iron fist, was unmistakable. The Iron Warlord's army had come for him. The executioner hesitated for the briefest moment, his blade still raised. It was long enough. Voss moved. Even in chains, he was faster than the guards expected. His knee slammed upward, caving in the executioner's chest with a sickening crunch. As the massive alien collapsed, Voss spun, using the chains still wrapped around his wrists as a weapon. He twisted, snapping the throat of the nearest guard. A rifle clattered to the ground. He dove for it. A plasma bolt sizzled past his face as the council's bodyguards rushed forward. Voss hit the ground, rolling beneath another shot. His fingers found the trigger. He didn't hesitate. The first shot took an alien in the throat. The second went through another's skull. He ripped the restraints from his wrists, his cybernetic arms sparking from the dampeners they had used to suppress it. It didn't matter. He was free. The amphitheater was in chaos. Crowds trampled each other, screaming. Security forces scrambled to react, but they were too slow. A dropship roared overhead, its side panels sliding open to reveal human warriors in full combat gear. They leaped from the ship, grav grenades cushioning their descent. The moment their boots hit the ground, they opened fire. The Iron Warlord's most loyal soldiers had come to reclaim him. Voss didn't stop to celebrate. He fought his way toward them, weaving through the storm of plasma fire. He caught a rifle tossed his way, its familiar weight settling into his hands like an old friend. His cybernetic targeting interface flickered back to life. Targets acquired. He fired in rapid bursts, cutting through the panicked guards. He spotted a familiar face in the dropship's open ramp, Talia Vren, his second in command, her armor battle-scared but her smirk intact. "Cutting it close, aren't you?" Voss growled as he vaulted onto the ramp. "Had to make it dramatic." Talia shot back, tossing him a fresh power cell. The dropship banked hard, pulling away as explosions rocked the palace. Fighters screamed toward them, but their escort squadron cut them down in a brutal crossfire. The Iron Warlord's forces were not here for conquest. This was an extraction, a warning. As Voss strapped himself into the harness, he turned his gaze to the capital below. Fires rage. The council was in disarray. He leaned forward, voice cold. They should have finished the job. Then the dropship disappeared into the void, leaving only destruction in its wake. Marcus Voss had escaped, and war was coming. Marcus Voss had barely escaped with his life, but the hunt had only just begun. The Iron Warlord sat in the co-pilot's chair of the Black Vulture, a stolen Ascendancy corvette retrofitted into a warship, its hull scarred from 100 battles. His cybernetics were still recalibrating after weeks of dampening fields, sending dull aches through his body. He ignored them. Pain was an old friend. Across from him, Talia Vren studied the nav screen, her expression grim. "They'd locked the entire sector down," she said, tapping the holomap. "Checkpoints at every jump gate, patrols on every major trade route. They want you dead yesterday." Voss's eyes flicked over the data. The Ascendancy wasn't wasting time. His escape had humiliated them, and now they were throwing everything they had into hunting him down. He leaned back, arms crossed. "Who's leading the hunt?" he asked. Talia didn't look up. "Cyric Karish." Voss exhaled slowly. That was a problem. Karish wasn't some bureaucratic lapdog or pompous fleet commander. He was a killer, one of the Ascendancy's most feared enforcers. He had personally crushed 2 human rebellions and left entire colonies in ruin. He wouldn't make the mistake of underestimating Voss. "We'll need to change course," Voss decided. "They'll expect us to head toward the outer rim." Talia gave him a sharp look. "So where do we go?" "The opposite direction." Her brow furrowed. "You're suggesting we fly straight into the core worlds. That's suicide." Voss let a ghost of a smile touch his lips. "Only if they see us coming." Talia sighed. "You're impossible." But she keyed in the coordinates anyway. The ship's engines rumbled as they adjusted course. Minutes later, alarms blared. "Proximity alert," the ship's AI intoned. "Enemy vessels inbound." Talia swore. "They're already here." Voss was out of his seat in an instant, striding toward the weapons console. The screen showed 3 enemy ships closing fast. Ascendancy frigates, sleek and deadly, moving to box them in. "They must have predicted our trajectory," Voss muttered. His mind raced. The Black Vulture was fast but outgunned. They wouldn't survive a direct fight. Then he spotted it. A debris field, the shattered remains of an old battle drifting nearby. Wreckage big enough to hide in. He jabbed a finger at the screen. "Head for that debris field. Now." Talia didn't hesitate. The Black Vulture banked hard, engines flaring as they dove toward the twisted wrecks of ancient warships. Plasma bolts streaked past, sizzling against the shields. The enemy was closing fast. "Hang on," Talia shouted. She weaved the corvette through the labyrinth of broken hulls, skimming dangerously close to jagged metal. Voss braced himself, watching as the enemy frigates followed, their pilots struggling to match the maneuvering. Then he saw his opening. A massive, derelict dreadnought drifted ahead, its rusted hull split down the middle. A narrow gap, just big enough for the Black Vulture, lay in its core. "Talia, through there." She glanced at the gap. "You're insane." "Trust me." She gritted her teeth and yanked the controls. The ship shot forward, slipping through the gap with meters to spare. The frigates weren't so lucky. The first pilot panicked, pulling up too late. Its hull clipped the wreckage, sending it into a deadly spiral. The second tried to follow but hesitated. In that moment, Voss seized his chance. "Fire aft torpedoes." The missiles streaked back, slamming into the wreckage just as the second frigate entered the gap. The explosion tore through its hull, sending flaming debris into the third ship. Silence filled the cockpit. Then, Talia let out a breathless laugh. "That was the dumbest thing I've ever done." Voss smirked. "But it worked." She shook her head, still grinning. "All right, Warlord. Where to now?" Voss stared at the stars ahead. They were still hunted, still outnumbered, but he wasn't dead yet, and that meant the war wasn't over. The Black Vulture drifted in the void, hidden within the shadow of a dead moon. Its engines were cold, its lights dimmed. It was a corpse pretending to be part of the graveyard. Inside the ship, Marcus Voss studied the tactical display. Their pursuers had fallen behind. For now, they had shaken the Ascendancy's hunters, but it wouldn't last. Sirik Karish was too smart to be fooled for long. They needed reinforcements. "We're not going to win this war with 2 people and a stolen corvette," Talia said from across the cockpit. She leaned against the bulkhead, arms crossed. "We need soldiers. We need ships." Voss nodded. "I know where to find them." Talia arched an eyebrow. "You mean the Forsaken?" "They're still out there," Voss said. "Exiled, abandoned. They have every reason to hate the Ascendancy and Earth." Talia scoffed. "They also have every reason to hate you." She wasn't wrong. The Forsaken were the remnants of humanity's lost wars. Soldiers disavowed by Earth's cowardly government, left to rot after failed rebellions and unsanctioned conflicts. Mercenaries, deserters, war criminals. Voss had fought alongside many of them. He had also left some behind. "They don't have to like me," Voss said. "They just have to want revenge more." Talia sighed. "I'll set a course." The Black Vulture burned toward the void. The Forsaken made their home in a graveyard. Deep in the abandoned sector known as the Silent Abyss, the remains of a lost fleet drifted in darkness. Broken battleships, shattered carriers, forgotten war machines. This was where the Forsaken had built their refuge, welding together the wreckage into a hidden fortress. It was a place for ghosts, a place where soldiers with nowhere else to go waited to die. As the Black Vulture approached, automated defenses powered up, turrets turning, missiles locking on. Talia's hands tightened on the controls. "We're not welcome," she muttered. Voss stood. "They'll listen." He sent a transmission. No words, just a code. An old battlefield signal, long abandoned. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the defenses powered down. The Black Vulture was allowed to land. The War Council gathered in the hollowed-out remains of an ancient dreadnought. Dozens of battle-hardened men and women filled the chamber, their armor scavenged from wars long forgotten. They weren't just human. Among them were battle-scarred aliens, those who had fought alongside humanity before Earth had surrendered and abandoned them all. At the head of the gathering stood General Orlan Drev, former hero of Earth, now a warlord of the lost. His one remaining eye burned with contempt as Voss entered. "Look what the void spat out," Drev said. His voice was like grinding metal. "The great Marcus Voss, the Iron Warlord himself. We thought you were dead." Voss met his gaze without flinching. "I should be." Drev smirked. "But you're too stubborn to die. As always." Talia stood tense beside him, her hand near her weapon. She knew how this worked. The Forsaken weren't just going to fall in line. "You have nerve coming here," Drev continued. "After what happened on Jericho." The words hit like a punch. Jericho, the last stand of Earth's forces in the Outer Rim, where the Ascendancy had crushed humanity's rebellion, where Voss had ordered a retreat to save what little remained, leaving thousands behind to die. "They call you a warlord now," Drev said. "But to me, you're still the bastard who ran." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Tension thickened. Hands drifted toward weapons. Voss didn't move. "You want revenge." His voice was steel. "You want to burn the Ascendancy to the ground." Drev sneered. "And you think you're the man to do it." Voss stepped forward. "Who else?" Silence. Then Drev chuckled. It was a cold, bitter sound. He turned to the gathered warriors. "You hear that?" he called. "Voss thinks he can lead us." His gaze flicked back. "If you want our loyalty, you'll have to earn it." Voss knew what was coming. Drev removed his gauntlets, rolled his shoulders. The challenge was clear. Single combat. The Forsaken didn't follow words. They followed strength. Voss clenched his fists, feeling the weight of his cybernetic arm. The past couldn't be undone. He had left men behind, but he was here now. He would bleed for their loyalty. Without a word, he stepped into the ring. The fight for an army had begun. Marcus Voss had fought 1,000 battles, but this one was personal. The War Council's chamber had transformed into a brutal arena. The Forsaken warriors circled the combatants, their voices a mix of amusement and bloodlust. They had no loyalty to words, no faith in empty speeches. If Voss wanted their allegiance, he had to take it with his fists. General Orland Drev cracked his knuckles, his cybernetic eye glowing red in the dim light. He was built like a war tank, scared, powerful, and radiating barely contained violence. "You should have stayed dead, Voss," Drev said, rolling his shoulders. "Would have saved you the embarrassment." Voss said nothing. Words wouldn't win this fight. Drev moved first. He was fast for his size, closing the gap in an instant, his fist a blur. Voss barely twisted in time, the punch grazing his ribs with enough force to make his vision spark. He countered with a sharp elbow, but Drev blocked it, driving his knee into Voss's gut. Pain flared. Voss staggered back, breath knocked from his lungs. The Forsaken jeered. Drev grinned. "That all you got?" Voss didn't answer. He adjusted, adapted. He wasn't the same soldier from Jericho. He was harder now, more precise. He waited for Drev's next attack. When it came, a brutal overhead strike. Voss sidestepped at the last second, grabbed Drev's wrist, and twisted. There was a sickening pop. Drev roared, but Voss didn't let up. He drove his cybernetic fist into Drev's jaw, sending the man reeling. The Forsaken's cheers turned into shouts of surprise. Drev shook off the blow and lunged again, his good arm swinging like a hammer. Voss let the punch graze his shoulder before slamming his knee into Drev's ribs. The older soldier grunted in pain, but he didn't go down. Good. Voss drove forward, relentless, fists striking like gunfire. He battered Drev, forcing him back step by step, until finally he delivered a devastating uppercut that sent the massive Warlord crashing to the floor. Silence. Drev groaned, rolling onto his back. Then he did something no one expected. He laughed. "Damn," he muttered, wiping blood from his lip. "I forgot how hard you hit." Voss stood over him, breathing heavily. "Are we done?" Drev's cybernetic eye flickered. Then he grinned. He pushed himself up and offered his hand. Voss took it. The Forsaken roared in approval. Talia exhaled sharply from the sidelines. "Took you long enough," she muttered. Drev clapped Voss on the back. "All right, Warlord, you have my men." He turned to the crowd. "We're taking the fight to the ascendancy." The warriors erupted in cheers. Voss let it sink in. He had his army. Now it was time to start a war. The campaign began with fire. The Forsaken struck fast, targeting supply lines and labor camps where humans were kept in servitude. The ascendancy had grown complacent, believing humanity broken. They were wrong. On the mining world of Corveth 6, Voss led an assault against a slaver outpost. His soldiers tore through the alien overseers, their weapons precise and merciless. The free humans stared at Voss as if he were a myth. "You came back," one of them whispered. Voss looked at the burning ascendancy banners. "We never left." Word spread. Across the galaxy, humanity stirred. Rebellions ignited. The ascendancy cracked down hard, sending extermination squads to crush the uprisings. But for every world they burned, 2 more rose in defiance. Voss stood at the center of it all, the Iron Warlord, the man who refused to fall. And for the first time, the ascendancy was afraid. The ascendancy was bleeding, but not yet broken. Their fleets still ruled the stars. Their armies still crushed resistance with ruthless precision. The rebellions across human colonies were embers, not yet a wildfire. Marcus Voss intended to change that. The time for raids and ambushes was over. If they wanted to win, they needed to strike where it hurt. The Throne Forge. It was the beating heart of the Ascendancy's war machine, the largest shipyard in the known galaxy, where dreadnoughts were forged and entire armadas were born. No human force had ever dared attack it. The very idea was suicide. Voss planned to do it anyway. In the War Council chamber aboard the Black Vulture, a hologram of the throne forge rotated slowly, its defenses marked in red. Dozens of Forsaken officers gathered around, studying the impossible target. Talia folded her arms. "Just so we're clear, this is the craziest thing we've ever done." Drev smirked. "And that's saying something." Voss leaned forward, his cybernetic fingers tapping the console. "If we take the forge, we don't just cripple the Ascendancy's fleet production. We send a message. Humanity isn't just fighting. We're winning." Murmurs rippled through the room. Daring raids were one thing. This was war on another level. One of the officers, an old warhound named Vec, scowled. "Even if we slip past their outer defenses, the forge has enough firepower to shred us before we get close." Voss didn't flinch. "That's why we won't be going in as a fleet." He keyed in a new command. The hologram shifted, zooming in on the underbelly of the station. A barely noticeable exhaust port flickered. "A single freighter can make it through this maintenance shaft undetected," Voss explained. "We land inside, breach the station's core, and disable their reactor shields. Once the shields are down, the fleet moves in and turns the forge into slag." Silence hung over the room. Then Drev chuckled. "Let me guess. You want to lead the infiltration team." Voss's expression was stone. "Of course." Talia sighed. "Like I said, crazy." But no one argued. The plan was set. The war was about to change. The freighter Iron Shadow drifted through the void, its hull disguised as a simple transport ship. Inside, Voss and his strike team waited in silence. Weapons were checked. Armor was tightened. No one spoke. There was nothing left to say. The pilot's voice crackled over the comms. "Approaching the forge. No alarms." Voss exhaled. "Good." The ship slipped through the maintenance shaft, engines humming softly. The forge loomed above them, a mechanical titan, its surface crawling with construction drones and starship skeletons. Its defenses were formidable, but they weren't looking for an attack from within. The ship latched onto a docking port. The doors hissed open. Voss led the charge. The first guards didn't even see them coming. Suppressed rounds cut them down before they could shout. The team moved fast, weaving through maintenance corridors, avoiding security patrols. Every second was a razor's edge. One wrong move, and the entire station would wake up. They reached the reactor chamber. Voss motioned to Talia. She pulled out the override spike and jammed it into the control panel. Code scrolled across the screen. "Almost there," she muttered. The doors behind them slammed open. Ascendancy shock troopers stormed in, weapons blazing. Voss dove behind cover, returning fire. Plasma bolts sizzled past his head. The room erupted into chaos. Talia swore. "They know we're here." Voss didn't hesitate. He vaulted over cover, charging straight into the enemy ranks. His cybernetic fist shattered an alien skull. He grabbed another and used its body as a shield, firing his rifle in precise bursts. The Forsaken fought like demons, cutting through the enemy forces with brutal efficiency. But more were coming. Talia's console beeped. "Got it." The reactor's shield grid flickered, then died. Voss activated his comms. "Fleet, you're clear." Far above, the sky ignited. The Forsaken fleet, hidden behind a nearby moon, roared to life. Destroyers and war frigates surged forward, weapons blazing. The forge's outer defenses scrambled to respond, but without reactor shields, their heavy guns were useless. The battle was over before it began. Voss and his team fought their way to the evac point as explosions tore through the station. Fire and smoke filled the corridors. By the time they reached their escape ship, the forge was already breaking apart, its burning remains falling into the planet below. The Ascendancy's greatest shipyard, gone. As the Black Vulture streaked away from the wreckage, Voss stared out the viewport, watching the inferno consume the station. Talia sat beside him, catching her breath. We just changed the war, didn't we? Voss's eyes were cold. We just started it. The destruction of the Throne Forge sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Across human colonies, rebel cells that had once fought in the shadows now rose in open defiance. The Forsaken became more than outcasts. They were legends, warriors who had struck a wound so deep that the Ascendancy could no longer ignore them. And now, the Ascendancy was coming for them. Marcus Voss stood on the bridge of the Black Vulture, watching sensor feeds light up with enemy signals. Dozens of Ascendancy warships were converging on their position, their sleek, angular hulls reflecting the cold void. The hunt was over. The trap had been sprung. Talia Vren clenched her jaw. They didn't just track us. They brought an entire Dan Armada. Voss didn't react. He had expected this. The Ascendancy didn't just want revenge. They wanted annihilation. And leading the charge was a name he had been waiting for. Sirik Karish. The Ascendancy's deadliest enforcer had arrived. A transmission request flashed on screen. Without hesitation, Voss accepted. Karish's image materialized, a towering figure in dark battle armor, his crimson eyes burning with controlled fury. His voice was calm, measured. Marcus Voss, Karish said, you should have stayed in your grave. Voss smirked. You should have made sure I was dead the first time. Karish tilted his head. You think you've won something. You burned one shipyard. Do you know how many more we have? Do you truly believe this? Rebellion will change anything. Voss folded his arms. It already has. Karish exhaled slowly, almost disappointed. I offered you mercy once. That was a mistake. His expression darkened. No more games, Warlord. No more escapes. No more revolts. You will die here, and your kind will be forgotten. The transmission cut. Immediately, alarms blared. The Ascendancy fleet was advancing. Talia turned to Voss. We can't fight this. Not head-on. He nodded. Then we won't. Voss activated the fleet-wide comms. All ships, execute Phantom Strike. The Forsaken fleet moved as one. They didn't form battle lines. They scattered, vanishing into asteroid fields, wreckage clouds, and dark space. Stealth systems activated. The enemy sensors flooded with ghost signatures, false readings, and sensor shadows. The Ascendancy's advantage, numbers, was suddenly useless. The Forsaken struck like wolves against a blind enemy. Hit-and-run attacks crippled warships before they could retaliate. Mines detonated in pre-planned ambush zones, turning entire formations into firestorms. In the chaos, Voss's flagship darted between the wreckage, avoiding the worst of the battle. But Karish was no fool. Voss barely had time to react before his ship was hit. The Black Vulture buckled, alarms screaming as explosions rocked the hull. An enemy destroyer had broken through the chaos, locking onto them with deadly precision. Karish was aboard that ship. We're boarded, Talia shouted, drawing her sidearm. Voss grabbed his rifle. Let them come. The ship's corridors became a war zone. Ascendancy shock troopers stormed through the breaches, their plasma rifles cutting down Forsaken warriors. Voss fought like a demon, moving through the smoke and fire, his cybernetic arms smashing through armor, his rifle barking death. But Karish was coming. And Voss knew, this time, only one of them would walk away. The Black Vulture was dying. Fires raged through the corridors, hull plating peeled away from the ship's skeleton, and warning klaxons howled like wounded beasts. The Forsaken fought fiercely, but the Ascendancy shock troopers were relentless, cutting down defenders with brutal efficiency. The battle was tilting. And at the center of it all, Marcus Voss walked toward his reckoning. Talia and Drev were still holding the bridge, buying time for the rest of the fleet to retreat. But Voss wasn't headed for the bridge. He was going to the cargo hold, the battlefield Karish had chosen. The Iron Warlord did not run from a fight. He stepped through the final blast door, rifle raised, scanning the ruined bay. The walls were scorched from previous explosions, metal beams twisted like broken bones. Containers were scattered, some still sparking with shattered power cells. Then he saw him. Sirik Karish stood near the wreckage of a Forsaken fighter, his armor gleaming in the firelight. He had removed his helmet, revealing a face carved from stone, expressionless, but for the cold, patient fury in his crimson eyes. A long scar ran from his temple to his jaw, a relic of old wars. He wasn't holding a rifle. He didn't need one. Voss lowered his own weapon. This was always going to end with blood and blades. "You've caused a lot of trouble, Warlord," Karish said, his voice eerily calm. "It ends now." Voss said nothing. He reached over his shoulder, drawing his combat knife. A brutal thing, serrated edges, waited for killing. He twirled it once, feeling the balance. Karish unsheathed his own weapon, a long, curved energy blade, humming with deadly heat. No more words. Karish moved first. He was fast, faster than any human should have been. His blade carved through the air, slashing for Voss's throat. Voss barely ducked in time, the heat of the energy edge singing his hair. He countered with a brutal hook, but Karish caught his wrist, twisted. Voss's arm went numb. Then Karish drove his knee into Voss's ribs. The impact sent him staggering back, pain exploding through his side. He barely had a moment to recover before Karish was on him again, slashing, striking. Voss blocked, dodged, countered where he could, but Karish was relentless. Every move was calculated, perfect. Voss had fought warlords, mercenaries, alien gladiators. Karish was better than all of them. A sudden kick sent Voss crashing into a supply crate. He groaned, rolling to his feet, his vision blurred. His cybernetics were damaged, his ribs probably broken. Blood dripped from a cut on his forehead. Karish stood over him, blade raised. "This is what happens to those who defy the ascendancy," Karish said, voice like steel. "You were strong, Voss, but strength alone isn't enough." Voss exhaled, tasting blood. Then he grinned. "You're right," he admitted. "Strength isn't enough." Karish's eyes narrowed. Too late. Voss yanked the emergency release on his cybernetic arm. The limb detached with a hiss of pneumatics, then exploded. The shockwave hurled Karish backward, his armor cracking from the force. He hit the ground hard, coughing, dazed. Voss pushed himself up, staggering, knife still in hand. He limped forward as Karish tried to rise. One last move. Voss grabbed Karish by the collar and rammed the knife into his gut. The blade punched through armor, through flesh. Karish gasped, crimson eyes wide in shock. Voss twisted the knife. Karish shuddered. Then his body went still. The Ascendancy's greatest enforcer, the hunter of humanity, was dead. Voss shoved him off the blade, breathing heavily. His vision swam. His body screamed in agony. Then his comm crackled. "Talia to Voss. We're getting overrun. We need to evac now." Voss wiped blood from his mouth. He took one last look at Karish's corpse. Then he turned and ran. The war wasn't over, but the tide had turned. The Black Vulture was a burning wreck, but Marcus Voss wasn't done yet. He limped through the ruined corridors, his breath ragged, body screaming in protest. The battle outside was still raging. Forsaken ships darting through the debris field. Ascendancy warships desperately trying to reorganize after Karish's death. But inside the ship, the fight was lost. "Talia, I'm en route to the bridge," he rasped into his comm. "What's our status?" "Static." Then her voice, sharp with urgency. "We don't have a status. We're about to die. Voss." That was fair. He pushed forward, stepping over fallen Forsaken and Ascendancy troops alike. The ship's artificial gravity flickered, and sparks rained from broken conduits. The Black Vulture was in its death throes. But so was the Ascendancy. Voss staggered onto the bridge just as another explosion rocked the hull. Talia stood at the controls, her hands flying across the consoles. trying to keep what little was left of their systems running. Drev was bleeding from a wound in his side, barking orders to the remaining crew. They barely looked up as Voss entered. "You're still alive," Talia muttered. "Good. Now help us not die." Voss moved to the tactical display. The battle outside was a mess. Forsaken ships were trying to escape, but Ascendancy reinforcements were closing in fast. They weren't interested in capturing anyone. This was extermination. Drev grimaced. "We don't have the firepower to fight our way out." "We don't need to," Voss said. He brought up a sector map. "The Ascendancy fleet is running on coordination protocols from their flagship. If we break their command link, we buy ourselves time." Talia frowned. "You mean blow up their flagship?" Voss nodded. "Exactly." Drev let out a breathless laugh. "I swear you're trying to get us all killed." Voss grinned despite the pain. "Not all of us." The Forsaken fleet made one final push. While most of their ships scattered, a single battered war frigate, the Black Vulture, turned directly toward the Ascendancy flagship, burning its engines at full thrust. Voss stood in the cargo bay with a strike team, ready for one last fight. His cybernetic arm was gone, his armor scorched, his body held together by sheer will. But none of that mattered. The war was at its turning point. He activated his comm. "All ships, on my mark, jump to the fallback rendezvous. We'll handle the rest." Talia's voice crackled back. "Voss, just do it." She was silent for a long moment. Then, "Don't get too dead." Voss smirked. "No promises." The Black Vulture smashed into the Ascendancy flagship's hull, sending shockwaves through both ships. The cargo doors blew open, and Marcus Voss led his final charge. The battle was a blur of blood and fire. The Ascendancy crew fought desperately, but they weren't prepared for Forsaken warriors fueled by rage and desperation. Voss carved through them, his knife a flash of death. Drev fought at his side, a relentless force of destruction. They pushed toward the command deck. By the time they reached it, the Ascendancy officers inside were already trying to retreat. Voss didn't give them the chance. He stormed in, weapon raised. One of the officers, a high-ranking admiral, stared at him in disbelief. "You can't. This is madness." Voss shot him. Then he turned to the command console. The flagship's coordination protocols controlled the entire fleet's movements. Disrupt them, and the Ascendancy forces would be left scrambling, blind, and vulnerable. Voss activated his comm. "Drev, set the reactor to overload." Drev hesitated. "You sure?" Voss exhaled. He looked around at the dying enemy, at the burning bridge, at the stars beyond the viewport. This was what it had all been for. Do it. The Forsaken fleet jumped away just as the Ascendancy flagship detonated. The explosion rippled through space, blinding in its fury. Without its command vessel, the Ascendancy fleet broke into chaos. Ships collided, lost formation, turned on each other in the confusion. The Forsaken had escaped, and Marcus Voss was gone. Or so the galaxy thought. ###epilogue. Months passed. The war had changed. The Ascendancy was no longer hunting rebels. They were fighting for survival. The name Marcus Voss became legend. Some said he had died in the final battle, his body lost in the wreckage. Others whispered that he had survived, rebuilding in the shadows, waiting for the final strike. His name was spoken in hushed tones across human colonies, a symbol of defiance, a ghost that haunted the Ascendancy's nightmares. Then, one day, in a dark corner of the galaxy, a new warship was spotted. It bore no markings, no allegiance, but its hull was black as midnight, and its captain, well, some men refused to fall.